Welcome to the Life is Relationships podcast, where we share biblical truths about marriage, parenting, and discipleship. The desire of CTCI is to see the hearts of individuals and families restored in their relationship to the Father, and for them to be empowered to have thriving, godly relationships that impact the communities around them. I'm your host, AJ Selby, and on today's episode, we'll be talking with Seth and Alicia Williams as they share some of their history in ministry, how they came to be at the end, and how seasons of change, with all of their highs and lows, often bring a deeper, more intimate trust in our walk with the Lord. Take a listen. Well, hey, Seth and Alicia, thank you so much for coming and being on the podcast today.
Thanks, AJ. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're honored.
So you guys, you are new to the staff here at CTCI, but I want to back up a bit. You guys have been married for 17 years, and you've been in ministry together for over 10 years. And as many people in ministry will know, that change and transition are really the only constant things when you're living life in ministry. And so can you tell us a bit about yourselves and what that has looked like for you?
Yeah, so we started out in Spokan, Washington around 2010, but we were just seeking the Lord together. We had both felt a change was coming around 2007, 2008. And then in 2009, our buddy from Spokan called us and said they're planting a stateside missionary base there in Spokan, and said, hey, would you guys consider praying about, coming alongside of us as we plant this? And so that's when we began. We made the trip to check it out, spent about 3.5 weeks out there, and just we're processing again. You mentioned transition, and that was a big role where we were, and we went out there, looked at it, checked it out, and felt like the Lord had us going out there in 2010 early.
Yeah, and just to put it into context, we'd already been married for 6 years at that point. I had gotten finished with college, and we'd always had ministry and missions in our heart. We, had dreamed even as we were just dating, we envisioned going overseas. We envisioned a life of ministry and missions. At that time, it really took the form of overseas missions. And so once I got done with school, like Seth had just mentioned, we went through this season in 2007, 2008 of being really ready to launch. We didn't have any kids yet.
Life was simple.
So, but we really strongly felt in January of 2009 that the Lord was closing that door and saying, no, you're not supposed to go overseas right now. And so it was, 7 months later, perhaps, that this call out of the blue came, and it was the only open door that we had felt all year. And it was not overseas. It was West Coast, which was like, what?
Yeah.
What? Talk about being off of our grid. Like we were not prepared for that call, but once
folks are strange out there.
Honestly, I remember it feeling like if we go west, it's like we're falling off the edge of the world. That is so bizarre. What a strange direction to go.
We never fell off.
We never fell off the edge of the world. We went, and we totally felt a confirmation.
We got there. We found out we were pregnant.
Yep. With our first.
Alicia was.
Yep. First week we got there. And we felt like Mary and Joseph. But in hindsight, that was actually relatively, I would say, easy transition for us, because the stakes, the stakes weren't as high. We had each other, and it was a unexpected move.
Yeah.
But very, very clearly, it was the open door the Lord was calling us to walk through, and it was a precious, precious season. Great joys, great thrills, also great pain and loss. We had one kid, and then we had another kid. Our second was born with heart defects, and so we had to endure, in the midst of a lot of other things, going through surgeries with her, and she was fine. She turned out to be fine, made it through all that. But all this stripping away really characterized this season in Spokan. And as young people, we had this ideal of, we're going to be overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows where, but it was a bit romanticized. And the Lord was like, it's not really about where I call you. It's about what I do in you. And we got put in, literally very specifically, got put into the poorest district in the city. He said,
and bought a house there.
This is the house I want you to buy.
Yeah.
And yeah. So anyway, I don't know if you want to tag on to that season.
Yeah, it was, I think you go with an idea of what ministry will look like.
Yeah.
Missions and all those things. And I think you said it, just the romanticized view of I'm going to go and change the nation. And then the Lord, dumps persecution or hardships. And you're like, did I miss God? You start doubting those things. And what it did was really laid a foundation of, no, we walk after Christ. And he went through trials, even unto death, and we haven't resisted to that point yet. So it was looking back, I don't think you ever really understand as you're going through those trials that what the Lord is doing. But I think it's that part as a believer, we just have to believe that he is doing something. He began a good work and he will complete it. And in this moment of pain, these trials, he's doing something. It's going to be good. He's going to complete it. And so I think it was hard for me. I guess Alicia as well. I think we've spoken about it in the past, but to go with, you think you know what you're going to do. I would say this would be an encouragement to anyone looking at going into ministry or missions or whatever. But you go in looking and thinking it's going to look like this, but just be ready for the Lord to do what he's going to do and know that he's called you to that, and be sure that he's also going to do that work in you. A lot of it will be in your own heart.
Yep.
And then for others,
Yeah. And be ready to be pruned.
Yeah.
And we came out of that season with
nubs.
Nubs. Well, it was a glorious season. It really was. But we also I think we'd been broken, like we had fallen on the rock in a lot of ways. Yeah. We'd faced death. We'd faced loss. We'd faced unemployment. We'd faced, separation, from family and just a pruning away of the things we thought our life was supposed to look like. There was a period of 6 months when our daughter was sick. We didn't leave the house except to go to the hospital with her.
We had to keep, keep her away from any kind of sickness and stuff. Anybody outside of.
For her own protection. So, but when we left that season, it felt like we had aged a lot more than just 7 or 8 years, in a good way. It felt like we were ready to handle heavier and the next thing. So
there's a verse that comes to mind, and I don't know if I heard it from Miss Susan actually, and it's Isaiah 45:3. And I think it really speaks to the gold and the good things that you end up coming out of those difficult seasons with. And it's Isaiah 45:3, where it says, I will give you the treasures of darkness and hidden wealth of secret places, so that you may know that it is I, the Lord, the God of Israel, who calls you by name.
Come on.
And that has been such an encouragement for me when I personally have gone through those seasons where it's like, did I miss you? Did I mishear, misunderstand what I was supposed to do? But you talk about falling on the rock, and not in a place of like falling from a height, but almost a clinging to. And it's beautiful, the treasure that the Lord gives us and those things that he gives us when we do cling to him and we fall on him in that way and we press into him.
Good.
And that's what I'm hearing from you in that season, that even though there were so many difficult things, that you really came out of those difficult seasons in a much better place than even you thought you would.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
So you have that time in Spokan.
Mm-hmm.
And then when did you leave Spokan? What did that change look like for you guys?
It was right after Christmas 2016. It was right about New Year. And I can characterize it best this way, but we felt like the winds changed. It's that thing in Mary Poppins where the winds changed. Yes. It's time for her to go.
Alicia took off with her umbrella.
I did. I grabbed my umbrella. I'm like, I feel the winds changing. it felt as though a hand that had been placed on us that was staying us for those 7 and a bit years was lifted. And it was kind of unexpected. I don't think we had really anticipated it. But it was something different that we were sensing. And we prayed, Lord, we feel like your hand's lifting and you're actually saying, stand up, look around, see where I'm redirecting you. And when we did, we both felt our hearts, again, unexpectedly. We had left Raleigh, North Carolina 8 years before thinking we were going to be launched into international missions. But here we are in 2017, New Year's, and the Lord was saying, actually, I'm calling you back to North Carolina. And
surely not, Lord. And I would like to state that those are some dear friends that
Absolutely.
we have.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Just for the record,
Absolutely,
the Rudolph gang and all the, just being overseas
treasures.
with them, and then stateside, we are they're brothers and sisters to us out there, and it wasn't leaving. I think years ago, just learning to not burn bridges, but build bridges, and saying, now we've got a representation here. These are brothers and sisters we have warred with.
Yeah.
We've gone through battle. We've gone through much, and they will continue being that. I think that's important in ministry, just to note that, don't leave a ministry with offense or bitterness or anything lingering. If there's something lingering, deal quickly with it, and let your heart be open. And I can tell you that leaves, opportunities, that leaves, cross-pollination. And so I just really feel like it's a part of the unity in the body, the John 17 stuff, so that may we be one, even as the Father, the Son, and the Spirit are one.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had felt, and I remember we had talked about it for years, like we had sown so much blood, sweat, and tears into that thing God was doing in Spokan that I knew it had to be God when we left, because it wasn't going to be a casual thing. It wasn't, it had to be God, and we had to be sent.
That's right.
We had to be released and blessed
to
go out. And that was a huge deal for us, because these were our, soldiers in arms partners, had been linked hardcore. And so it was a really beautiful thing. It was hard.
Yeah, they walked through my father's passing. I was on the phone hearing back in North Carolina that Dad had passed, and I'm there. My brothers, we're there praying, and we're, praying the Spirit and praying with understanding, just, going at it, just saying, Lord, you can resurrect them. And that's the kind of guys you want.
Those are just one of the things we'd walk through with them. Yeah. So we still dearly love them and miss them. But it was a joy then also to feel the winds changing and get to sense like, oh my goodness, Lord, you really are transitioning us. You're moving us. What an exciting thing. We have no idea what's next. We sensed God was, drawing out, moving out the tent pegs to become bigger and enlarging our territory. And that was the sense we got. We didn't know what that would look like at all. So we found ourselves going back to North Carolina, and we landed in my parents' house.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was our game plan. Yeah. Go back to and live with the in-laws.
So what did some of that time in Raleigh look like as a landing place for you guys, whether it was just when you landed there or in where you found yourself during that time before you came to Franklin?
I would say, again, we reconnecting with this house church network of people. We just kind of went right back in. Her family, was family ministers, and so we definitely connected with them. We first connected with them, but also just the group of people we had been in a house church with. They had been a part of a planting there in Raleigh named Antioch Raleigh, or Antioch RDU. So we quickly reconnected with them, and then within how many months I was, they were looking for somebody. Asked if I would consider.
It was actually about a year after we moved there.
Okay.
That you went on staff.
Yeah. So at first I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to hop into a church, a ministry calling full time. But So it was this thing of the Lord going through things and receiving what the Lord was doing and being open and just a dear group of men and women out there that like hearts and love discipleship. They love missions. They love, worship and prayer. So we hopped right into that. And also all the while we're at the Nelson's house with Dan and Nancy. And, that really prepped us for the end because they had all sorts of meetings and all sorts of people coming in and out of their house. And
it was an amazing season, really. It was kind of a season of paradoxes in Raleigh because we felt at peace where we were. We felt very much a part of a tribe, but we didn't feel like we were yet home. We didn't yet feel like we were to buy a house, or
we tried.
We didn't feel released to take that step. We did look a few times, but we have such a kindredness with my parents. It actually felt like, no, this is a God thing. We're actually able to coexist with my parents for all these years, for 3.5 years, with 4 kids in the house.
The grace, definitely. Grace.
And there was such a grace and such a love, and my kids' lives were so enriched. Yeah. We have 4 kids, and so it was a big happy hubbub, but it was a beautiful thing God was doing, and a sign and a wonder, and really a testament that we can do this, and we need each other. My kids need their grandparents, and the older generation just loved my kids. They were so, they were just delights. So it was a beautiful thing. Still kind of a head scratcher, like, what? Why? Okay, we're still here. So, yeah.
So then that leads us, you were wondering, why are we still here? And that leads us to, how did you find out about the inn, which I know goes a little further back than all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But how did you find out about the inn, and what led to you guys coming into this new season? And tell us some more about that.
Yeah. So we just felt like we were. So at the time, I was on staff at this the Antioch church there, and walked through this time with the senior pastor of saying, we're feeling like something's changing coming up, and we let them know we're processing this, and we thought it might be down with my brother who directs a ministry down in Alabama, and so we were testing the waters. We came through Franklin first to go to Alabama, come back with family here, and while in Franklin, we're just like, we saw my brother-in-law's sister, and I have a lot of sisters, I should note. And then we went down to Alabama and just felt like the Lord was closing that, but something was stirring in Franklin. As a kid, I grew up going to the inn on Sundays, the Sunday fellowship. That's where FCC was birthed out of. And so I would come up here and try to chase JJ and the Pons twins, and they were all faster than me, and playing Army. But so it was on my radar. Larry, I remember Jay being this towering guy that you just didn't want to make angry. And I was always fearful of Jay. But Larry, I kind of connected with just this, ever since a kid. I knew him, and he was my first coach in baseball, assistant coach. The first year I ever played organized baseball here in Franklin at around 6 or 7. And I had that kind of history here. But as we're, to take it back to Antioch, Larry's name was on my heart. And I just heard this, I need to get up with Larry Pons. And I was like, in my spirit, and I was like, all right, that's good. I haven't talked to the man in 25 years, and I probably had hair the last time I talked to him. I don't know. But
no Mr. Clean going on.
No, right. It's much cooler now than it was back then too. But I sat on it. I'm like, Lord, I don't know the first thing I'd say. And I'm like, well, as we're processing and looking at Franklin, possibly, I knew they had a Sunday fellowship, and maybe we'll just talk about that. So as I reached out, pause that. In this time, about 10 days, a good friend named Van called me and said, hey, Seth, I'm reading this incredible book. It's about this retreat center in Wales that the Holy Spirit just fell on, and all these miraculous things happened. And that Larry's name was popped in my heart, just within, days or a week before that. And so I'm like, well, I'd like to read that, man. And he's like, well, I want to, he basically was saying, I wanted to give you this book before I was even telling him anything else. But then I told him, it was kind of a confirmation of, all right, I'm going to read this book. And as I was reading, I was just stirred. I was like, man, that is incredible. If the Lord can do that there, man, wonder what he's, wondering what he's doing here or speaking to about the end. So I read the book and I was just so encouraged. It was called The Grace Outpouring. And what's the author's name? Is it
Roy Godwin? Is that right?
Yes. Roy Godwin.
Great book.
She's always good at that. So read that and was stirred up. I'm like, all right, I'm ready to call Larry. And so I just called, and Larry was the same as I remember. I don't think he's ever changed. His voice, everything about Larry was just like, calling and talking to him. And I was like, well, Larry, you were on my heart, and
here we are.
And we're praying about Franklin, coming to Franklin, and y'all are still doing the home fellowship and stuff. And he's like, yeah, and then we just talked a little bit and shot the breeze, and then he was like, well, do you want to just come for the fellowship, or are you open to what the Lord has if there's anything else? And I was like, well, man, I'm wide open. I don't know what the Lord's doing. We're just open to his leading right now. And so, again, this speaks of how the Lord moves and moves and migrates us. And so we just kind of said, well, we'll come. Larry, of course, full of wisdom, is like, well, why don't you come for a visit? And the visit led to a train to rain. A train to rain led to, kind of here we are. But would you fill or change anything there, babe? Want to add or subtract?
Boy. Yeah, it was last year. It was last fall's train to rain that by the end of the time here, I felt the Lord's smile, to quote Eric Liddell. I felt the smile of God on this thing.
Chariots of fire.
And
And
I felt
2019, right?
This was 2020.
2020.
Yeah, this was exactly 1 year ago this week. And I felt also the Lord speaking to my heart, just saying, I know the things I've put in your heart. You've walked with me long enough. You can trust me. I will fulfill what is me. And it was like the little person inside of me was like, yeah, I've always wanted to be a mountain girl. I've always wanted to be a smaller city girl,
babe.
Or a large town girl, not a city girl. So there were many things I was excited about, but there was also a great, I don't know how to, leave and cleave again. Like we had such unity and precious time with my parents, stepping out unexpectedly for them, stepping out from under, from within where they're called as Raleigh, North Carolina. And so leaving that was a big deal. It really was. It was a big deal to me. It was a big deal to my kids, and a much, much higher stakes this time.
Me as well.
It was harder than it had been 10 years before when it was just Seth and I. Now it was our kids, were being removed from their grandparents geographically, not in the spirit, but geographically. And we felt the sting of that. But we also felt, and I'll also say that this transition to the inn for many months, it felt the most out on a limb of any transition I've gone through in ministry before. It felt more like, I think by now I can recognize the scent of God, and I'm following it by my nose, but I'm not following it with my eyes. I can't see. I can't see it all. I can't see how it all fits together. I can't see what you're doing, Lord. Susan has this great teaching on, the vessels being emptied and the dregs being left behind. And she pours it into this opaque vessel at some point during this teaching. And I was like, that's exactly how I feel like I am right now. I've been poured into something opaque that I cannot see out of. I cannot see what God's doing, but I'm following him by the scent of my nostrils. I'm following him like, Lord, I'm really stepping out, beyond what I can see. It felt like a bigger risk than we'd ever taken before in some ways. And it took a number of months before that. I don't know what the word would be, but that opaqueness began to wear away, and I began to feel like I could sense, I can see what you're doing. I can't see how you're doing it all, but I can recognize you now. We really did hear you, and it was a blind step, but he was
AKA faith.
He was with us. He's been with us. So
that's awesome. And so now here you are at the inn, and what are you doing here? You're now in a new position. Talk to us a little bit about that and what that's looking like for you together.
Yeah, so we are now the lead servants. I don't like titles.
It's okay to say directors.
No, we're the directors. We were just as shocked as anyone, I guess. Like, wait, what? We talked, after hearing from the board, we were asked, by Larry to apply for his position, and immediately I was like, how do you fill Larry and Susan's shoes? I mean, ever since a kid, I'd known them to be so incredibly amazing and faithful stewards / servants. And so even for Larry to ask us to do that was like, fear and trembling, like, and knowing that it's a weighty thing. And right away, we really didn't want to just jump into this. Oh yeah, that's amazing. But it was something where like we needed to be on the same page. I shared it with Alicia, and initially we're just like, let's seek the Lord on this. Let's get His heart and because I know this is not an easy path, and it's nothing we're giddy about a promotion just for the sake of having a title or promotion, but the weight of what the Lord would call us to. So I think we went, after discussing it, we prayed, we sought counsel, we a lot of just nerve-wracking times where it's like, Lord, both ways. The fear of like, what if we get it? Or the rejection of, what if we don't? To be honest, was heavy. And I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel like I had all the pieces or all the talent, because you see people, you're like, well, they would be much better, or they would be, and it's just like the Lord was saying, we just believe that, Lord, if you want this door open, you open it. And if you want this door shut, you shut it. And we don't, regardless of where, desires or anything else. So I think that's the way we approached it. And do you have anything to that, baby?
From the get-go, it was God. It was something God was asking us to do as a step of obedience. And so that was really a sober thing to us. But I absolutely felt that, like, in this step, we'd be just obeying the Lord just to apply. But putting ourselves out there, it was like our great comfort in a sense is that we know from the get-go we can't do it. We really can't do it in our own power and strength. We have to keep falling on the rock. We have to keep running back to Him, and we feel the affirmation of the Lord in all of these events. Like, wow, He trusts us with responsibility, and that responsibility is lives, is people. That is a huge, weighty thing. But we fall on Him, and we every day we declare our dependence on Him. And so, for good or for worse, that's where we're at. We feel like we don't have in ourselves much to offer, but He has so much to offer through us, and we recognize that from the get-go. We have to have Him. We have to have what His Spirit brings, and what He anoints us to do is what we do. So,
that's good, babe.
Yeah.
And so much of that is walking in the obedience of where you feel that. As we're getting ready to wrap up, do you have any final encouragements for anybody that may feel like they're in a season of change themselves, and they feel like they can't see, they might not even be able to smell where the Lord is leading at this time? But what's some encouragement that you might give someone that's listening that feels like they're in this season of change now?
Run to his heart and be assured that he doesn't change. Those circumstances change. He doesn't. And
Yeah, I just would say lower expectations of what you think he's going to do and just raise the expectations of he is with me. He will never leave me. He'll never forsake me. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter how hard it gets. It doesn't matter how many times I trip, I fall. You got to get back up and just don't quit. Just keep taking steps and just be reassured that he's, he's doing something through this trial. He's doing something through this transition. And I think then you can you can have that plan. That's fine to have that plan.
Yeah. But
then equally as important is to say, I'm going to be led by his Spirit. And I just want to say yes to you, Lord, no matter what. And that way disappointment doesn't take us down. We are appointed by God to do good works, to serve him, no matter what that means. A cross probably wasn't, is not everybody's choice of how to do things, but a cross is necessary to get through and to weed out the attitudes and to do, get where we think we have our rights in our flesh. But it's like, will you follow me? Will you take up your cross daily? Will you follow me when it gets hard? And I'm still learning how to do that. It's not easy. Yeah. There's new levels to what he's calling us. There's the depth as we get to know him better. So
yeah, and I'll also say that resist the urge to analyze and try to self-assess and label and put it in a box. We can't really do that. We can't do that. We have to trust the Lord's writing a good story with us.
Come on.
And every chapter won't make sense in the middle of it, but we, we're only around 40 years old, but we can already look back on the seasons in the past and say, wow, that chapter really was packed with so much amazing stuff. And it was all leading up to the next chapter. And, he's beautiful. He's beautiful. He's beautiful. And we need to stop asking, why, Lord? Why? Resist that urge to try and figure it out. Trust is I know the heart of my Father, and he's beautiful for this circumstance and this day and this situation and this year. And I really can walk in trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm reminded of, I heard a very wise man once say, oftentimes we look at our failures and we feel like the book of our lives is filled with failures, but we have to be reminded that it's just a chapter in a book of successes of our life. And where there are those seasons, and I think that still applies here, where there are the seasons that feel like they're the dark seasons. And yet the book is a book of life where there are the valleys, but we also have the glory in the mountaintops with it as well.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with us today. We're excited for what the Lord is doing here at the Inn with you guys as the new directors. And we're just so grateful that you were able to have the time to talk to us today.
Thanks, AJ. Appreciate it, bud.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and we would love if you left us a review. For more information about CTCI and our upcoming programs, be sure to check out ctcilife.org. This podcast is a production of Christian Training Center International. It is produced by AJ Selby, Rebecca Wall, and Seth Stradling. It is edited, mixed, and mastered by AJ Selby and Corey Kassmeyer.